Welcome to the ADHD Open Space Podcast. My name is Gray Miller, and I will be your host and facilitator as we explore ideas, workarounds, accommodations, and other aspects of being a professional adult with ADHD. Most of this will come from my perspective as a cis white male in his mid-50s, living in the Midwest, who found out a year ago that I've been living with ADHD my entire life. I am not an expert on ADHD, except maybe in not knowing I've had it for half a century and somehow still getting by. But I promise to cite my sources, or at least admit when I'm repeating something I read on the interwebs. If I say anything you don't agree with, you're welcome to call me on it and let me know. This podcast is also part of the lead-up into the first ADHD Open Space happening in Madison, Wisconsin on January 20th, 2024. You can learn more about that event both here in the show and at the website adhdopen.space. The first 30 episodes of this podcast are also being released as part of National Podcast Post Month, NaPodPoMo. That means things might get a little rough, but it's going to be fun. Kind of like ADHD, right? Enjoy the show. Whoever, whenever, whatever, it's over. The 4 Principles That Make Open Space Work. Written by Gray Miller and published on Substack.com on October 17th, 2023. My elevator pitch on open space goes something like this. You know how regular conventions give you a program that tells you who's going to talk, what they're going to talk about, and exactly how long they're going to let you think about it before they stop talking? Open space is the opposite of that. People show up, and we ask them, what do you want to talk about right now? How long do you need? And then we give them that space. I found that the elevator pitch works pretty well, but some people get a whiff of anarchy about it. One person put it politely, so it's like a study hall? I hated study hall, so I hope not. So the elevator pitch is still a work in progress, and meanwhile, I can talk about the 4 principles that make the whole thing magic. Number 1, whoever shows up are the right people. There is no slate of presenters at an open space. Professionals who deal with ADHD folks might show up. I'd be surprised if they didn't. Sometimes even big names show up. Like I'd be delighted if Jessica McCabe showed up arm in arm with Ned Hallowell. But if they did, I would emphasize to them that unlike the other conventions they speak at, in an open space, they are not expected to do anything more or less than anyone else. They can think of this as a vacation, or if they prefer, an opportunity. Suddenly they have the chance to present on that weird topic that's been in the back of their mind, or even, OMG, just be participants at an event. Meanwhile, people who have wanted a chance to present an idea or pose a question for the group get the opportunity in a cooperative, low-pressure, and supportive environment. Number 2, whenever it starts is the right time. I started doing open spaces about 15 years before I learned I had ADHD, so now I understand why this principle was always my favorite. #time blindness. There will be a definite start time for the ADHD open space, probably 9:30, 10 a.m. That's when everybody meets and plans the day's agenda. More on that later. There will also be a closing circle, probably about 5 p.m., where we come together and close out the day. Aside from that, there is no fixed schedule. I mean, there are 30-minute, I'm making air quotes, 30-minute blocks set up across the top of the agenda wall, but those are guideposts, not rules. People are not forced to either fill or cut short their presentations to fit. Instead, they guesstimate how long they think they'll need, and they start their session when they are ready. If that's at the time they picked and put on the board, cool. But if they're immersed in some other conversation at that time, as a facilitator, I let them decide what their priority is. You want to start it later? Fine. Want to cancel it or let it happen without you? Also fine. My job as the facilitator is simply to give them that choice and let everyone else know about it. Usually that means a lot of shuffling taped pieces of paper and moving the now-ish sign. It makes the day into a fluid, exciting, and unique learning environment. Number 3, whatever happens is the only thing that could have. Remember how I said at the beginning that there is no agenda? There really is no agenda. So if no one decides to put up a session, nothing will happen. Now, that's never happened in well over 100 open space events that I've facilitated. But it's still worth reminding the attendees they have a measure of responsibility that is different than most conferences. It also means that if, after the open space, there is something you wish would have been discussed, covered, explored, you have no one to blame but yourself. Number 4, when it's over, it's over. Now, this is the other half of that second principle about when it starts. You remember how those half-hour blocks are just guideposts? So if a session topic takes 15 minutes to cover, you take that 15 minutes and do something else. If it takes 5 minutes, it takes 5 minutes. We don't ask you to fill time if you are done. If, on the other hand, a discussion needs 4 hours to adequately cover, which is rare but has happened, then we make the time available. That's another part of my job as a facilitator. You may need to move the session to a different place, but you can keep doing it until you decide it's done. The principle also reminds us that everything does have an end, including the availability of an open space location. We do call everyone together at the end of the time in a space to have a closing circle. Open space attendees discover that a day filled with people sharing things that matter personally and passionately can be exhausting. We take a very short time to celebrate the unexpected connections and new friendships. One way I put it at a past open space was, every open space is a unique combination of people and a unique coming together of knowledge and talents and experience that will never happen again. We choose to focus on the great and cool stuff that happens because of this and not say, damn, I wish such and such had happened. In the end, it's up to us. That's the 4 principles. Now, tomorrow in the podcast, I will talk about the one dangerously addictive and immensely fun law of open space. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the ADHD Open Space Podcast. Again, my name is Gray Miller. If you have any comments or questions about the show, you can feel free to leave them on the podcast page at adhdos.substack.com/podcast. Or you can email me directly, Gray, Gray, at adhdopen.space. The background music for the intro and outro are from pixabay.com and are called Funny Days Together by Background Music Lab, used under a YouTube Content ID license.